Our guest today is Dr. Todd Driggers, a graduate of Purdue University School of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Driggers was a 2016 finalist for the T.J. Lefebvre Avian Practitioner of the Year Award.
Let's jump right in, Dr. Driggers. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today and to go over a little bit about a wing trim method, I guess you would say, that you've introduced. We're really interested to hear about this. Wing trimming is a bit of a controversial topic to parrot owners. People want to trim for a variety of reasons, and they don't want to trim for a variety of reasons. So wing trimming, is it good? Is it bad? Or is it more nuanced?
So wing trimming is a compromise of their overall welfare, and it can be done in worse ways and it can be done in better ways. So there's lesser ways to compromise the welfare that is technique dependent and still give them some of the abilities to say yes or no in negative situations. So when we stop their ability to evolutionarily respond to something of a noxious stimuli and they can't fly away, or every time they do fly, they hurt themselves, that's a compromise of welfare. If they're able to at least land well, take off, and get away or affect athletically their stress levels by diminishing their cortisol with flight, then that is a situation that is, I would call, a lesser compromise of welfare. I'm not a proponent of wing trimming. I'm not a proponent of leaving them full flighted. I'm a proponent of assessing that individual bird's needs in its individual housing situation to mitigate the risk of it hurting itself and to maximize the chances that it can respond behaviorally in a positive way.
Here at the aviary, we find that when we have, let's say, an aggressive bird, especially Amazons, who tend to be more willing to bite when aggressive, that would be about the only time we would do a wing trim, is if the bird was aggressively flying towards the face to be able to attack. And the wing trim is done only so that we can get some space to be able to start the behavior modification, the step up onto a stick, the target training, and then we let the wings grow out. So we don't do it very often because, just as you say, we want the bird to have that freedom of choice, but also the exercising, as you're saying, is really important. So with that, you've introduced a variation on wing trims, which I find really interesting because it seems to be a compromise.
Right off the bat, I will say we don't perform any traditional wing trims here at the office. And the reason is because it is such a compromise in their ability to move and to say yes or no. So we feel that that's an inalienable right, that they're able to say yes or no to something, and that they're able to not get hurt in situations, in captive situations that and we want to just ensure that they have that welfare and that choice. So with that in mind, as the normal wing is stretched out, you have primary feathers 10 through 1, and then the secondary feathers that are associated with, sort of the landing gear. Those feathers, the longer the feathers and the longer the feathers are from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other, has to do with the aspect ratio, and the width of the wing increases a bird's ability to maneuver or stop quickly. Longer, thin wings are meant for gliding. Long and fat wings are meant for, maneuvering. So you can tremendously manipulate their ability to maneuver by trimming them, which again, I think is an ethical compromise. When we don't take the length of any of the feathers off, but the width, which is the back edge of that feather off, you do a few things for them. So one thing is you maintain that aspect ratio and their ability to land, and and fly is much better. We leave more of the tip of that wing tip on if the bird is heavier or if there's been a compromise in that a bird's ability to be mobile, if there's been a past injury or something to that effect. So you have a trailing edge, a leading edge, and a trailing edge. And that trailing edge is the only part that we really trim. So you have some nice diagrams up here that show the skinny trim versus the traditional trim, which is mid shaft, or some people even go below the coverts. Traditional trims usually involve shortening of the primary feathers. Some people even shorten the secondary feathers. When you shorten the feathers, and the way that the birds hold their wings, they actually tuck their wrist underneath those secondary feathers. So if you cut the primary feathers and they are tucked position, you stand the risk of them actually poking themselves and irritating their sides. So we don't do that trim. You also are removing a significant amount of their aspect ratio, which is the length of the entire wing from one tip to the other, which increases the gravitational pull or makes them fall very fast in comparison. So we try not to trim any of the length, we trim the width. Furthermore, as cut feathers are a length, when a new feather comes in or molts behind it, it sprouts out past the length of those cut feathers, which then predisposes it to further trauma. So you oftentimes will get broken blood feathers based upon the fact that that new feather is longer than the cut tips on the cut wing or on the cut feather itself. So there's a lot of reasons that we don't do the traditional trims, and it does take a lot of education when clients come in, because they can go to a pet store and the pet store will do it just as they like. But we spend a lot of time educating the clients based upon the risk factors, the positives, the negatives, and whatnot of why we don't do the traditional trim. And usually when we introduce the idea of the skinny trim, which is that third thing down that we're going to talk about now, they feel that it cosmetically looks better. They know that it impacts the welfare in a positive way, and they feel better about the bird's ability to respond in a negative or positive situation, so they can actually connect and communicate, which not the voice isn't the only thing that they connect and communicate with. The wings are I think the wings cast a vote towards something that they want to be with or something that they want to be away from.
Mm-hmm.
That allows you to go from gear 1 to 10 versus when you cut all of those feathers off, you are stuck in first gear and they fall rapidly. So this is just but one more aspect of their welfare that I think that we have to begin to steward and look at, is to increase their freedom and their choices and try to expand their Umwelt, the world of senses and their sensory bubbles.
I think, from a welfare point of view, this is a real advancement. If we have a compromise, which is better for the bird all the way around, we're thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
Perfect.
So thanks so much.
Hi, Charlie. Hi, Charlie. How are you? How are you? Yes. If you want to come right over my shoulder, that's fine too. Wherever you think you're going to get the best. Okay. Hi, sweetheart. So the first thing we do is make sure that there's no blood feathers before we do any adjustments. I'm going to ask you to hold his feet. Okay. Yeah, okay, so we're good. There's no blood feathers. Okay. There we go. Good. So traditional trims would cut. It's called a trisecting trim. But what we're going to do is the skinny trim, which is safer. Whoop. Come here, sweetheart. So Charlie's a strong flyer. And so we know that, so we're going to adjust the trim so that it slows him down. So we have less of the tip and more of the broad area left open. And we're going to do that for quite a few feathers. This is going to be safer in that he can still fly, but he has to work much harder. And it's very difficult for him too. So we see a little more off that tip. It's harder for him to get loft, and he has to work. So this is actually, for a strong flyer, the same thing as for exercise, as a runner putting on weights. Have you ever heard of that? Where runners will actually give them more of a load. This also helps with, there we go, the growing out of the feathers. There we go. So that when the feathers molt, they fall out. You're losing his wing.
I've got his feet, so I can't.
When the feathers molt and fall out, you don't have the difficulty of one falling out, but another side being, there we go, you see? Being unprotected, because you can't guarantee on how they're, so you can get a blood feather coming in that then isn't protected. This way, if a blood feather comes in, it is protected by a neighboring feather still. There we go. Let's see how many do we have. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there we go. And that is the difference. So all around, it's a better trim for the bird, and in fact, we don't do any transecting trims anymore. Just everything about it is a better deal for the bird. And there's the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go.